Hey guys, Mike here from Lunch Money Comics with a comic book roundup video for you. So whenever I'm out hunting for comic books, I'm always filming, and a lot of times I don't get enough footage to make any one single video. So all those clips build up on my phone, and I need to do one of these roundup videos where I talk about all the comic books I've found in strange and unusual places over the last month or so that I have not yet talked about on my channel, and I share them with all of you. And I definitely got these in weird places. I have yard sales, flea markets, consignment shops, and some not so unusual places like comic book shops. I have footage from most of these. I will intercut them while I'm talking, but the one thing they all have in common, I think they're pretty cool, and I want to share them with all of you. So before I show them to you, you guys know the drill. If you want to support the channel, go down, hit like, comment, and subscribe. And of course, follow me on Instagram under Lunch Money Comics IG. And if you do follow me on Instagram, you may very well have already gotten a sneak peek of a couple of the books I'm about to show you. So first up, I have some comic books I found at yard sales, tag sales, garage sales, whatever you call them in your neck of the woods, boot sales in the UK. And these are very hit or miss for me, guys, especially when you go out blind. Sometimes I'm just driving around following the signs. Other times they're advertised online. Well, in this particular case, it was just a blind find. I was a couple towns away from where I live, followed the signs, and there was this person selling a lot of stuff in their front yard. And they had a box of comic books, and they were all pretty cheap. They were like $1 each. They weren't in great condition, but there were two I absolutely felt like getting. The first up is this. This is Batman's Detective Comics number 472. It's from 1977. Not a key as far as I know, just a really cool cover with Marshall Rogers, Terry Austin. I think Tatiana Wood did this cover. I don't know. I thought it was a really cool cover art. It's not in the best shape. There's some water damage on it, I think, but I thought it was neat for $1. And the other one I got is this. This is Mr. Miracle Volume 2, number 1. This one's from 1989. Mr. Miracle was first created by Jack Kirby in 1971. He's one of the new gods. But this is the second volume. This is by J.M. DeMatteis and Ian Gibson. And this volume is characterized by a lot of kind of goofiness, a lot more humor. And that's definitely, indicated by the art inside. Mr. Miracle, I think, is a pretty cool character. Again, this book isn't worth a ton, but for $1, I was happy to pick it up. So these next comic books I got in Brimfield, Massachusetts. Now I talk about Brimfield on my channel all the time because it's the site of the largest flea market in America. It happens 3 times a year for a week each time. I'm actually going to the summer one very soon. But I actually didn't get these at the flea market. I got them at the Brimfield town-wide yard sale. Basically, a whole bunch of people in the town all decided to have a yard sale on the same day. Despite the fact that there were 50 different houses and I went to most of them, I didn't find any comic books except for at the very first place I went. It was right on the town common, and they weren't really comic books. They were trade paperbacks. I got 3 of them for $2 total. And here are 2 of them. So these ones here are Bone. Bone is a beloved series by Jeff Smith. These are trade paperbacks, like I said, and the reason I got these, they're great for my kids. I actually got one of these very recently. My son gobbled it up. He's a voracious reader. He really liked it. You see here I have volume 1 and volume 8. So I knew he liked the first one, and I had to pick these ones up for 50 cents each. But the big score for me was actually this one. So this is The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and this is actually by Eric Shanower and Skottie Young, and you can see that very iconic Skottie Young art right there. Very Calvin and Hobbes, very whimsical. And this book here, this story came out in 2009, and it was the Eisner Award winner for Best Limited Series, Best Publication for Kids. And what I love about this, besides the fact that it's really great Skottie Young art, is that it's not based on the movies. It's based on the L. Frank Baum books. And they are actually quite different from the movies themselves. So I saw this book, and I knew my daughter would love it because she loves classic movies, and she really loves The Wizard of Oz. So I came back from Brimfield, guys, with these 3 books, and I showed this to my daughter, and she immediately made me sit down and read it to her. And we've had a great time going through this book. The art's great. Of course, the story is very cool. It's a learning experience for me because I never read the original book. Awesome, awesome series, guys. It's always great to read to your kids. Everyone knows that. But if you like comic books, reading comic books to kids is even more fun. So if you haven't checked this one out, guys, it's a really, really cool read. And again, I got this one for $1. Totally worth that just for the reading material and seeing the look on my daughter's face when I handed it to her. So next up, I was in the town of Southwick, Massachusetts at an indoor yard sale, basically an indoor flea market consignment shop. Now, I'd actually been there in the past. I did a whole video on this place because there was a vendor selling $1 comic books. And when I was there, I was trying to kind of hunt on a budget, and I only spent $12 on some $1 books and got some pretty good deals. But I knew I absolutely had to go back. There was a lot of stuff there I wanted. So I was in the area. I went to this place, and that vendor was no longer there. I actually asked the people who worked there what happened to him, and he said most of those comic books had sold, and then he decided to take the rest of them out. Now, every time I mention a place like this on my channel, I know some local New Englanders seek these places out and tend to clean them out. I don't know if I had an impact on this guy leaving, but either way, there weren't any comic books in that same booth. However, I did find another vendor who had not a ton of comic books, but some kind of interesting ones, and they were pretty cheap. So I'm going to show you guys a clip of the comic books they had. I got 3 of the books you're about to see. I want to see if you can guess which 3 you think I picked up. Okay, did you figure it out? So I actually only showed you half of the comic books they had. The other ones weren't that good. The first 2 I got, I think, are pretty obvious. I've mentioned in the past many times on my channel that I like Voltron. You see a toy right over there. And I had to get issue 2 and 3 of the Voltron limited series. Now, this is a 3-part series that came out in 1985, featuring the first appearance of Voltron in US Comics. Now, anyone who watches my channel may have seen a few weeks ago, I was at a comic book show where I got Voltron number 1. I got it for a pretty good deal at the big CliffCon show in Connecticut, but I wanted issues 2 and 3, and I couldn't believe it. You know, it was only a few days later I found 2 and 3 for $3 each to finish the 3-part set. It was meant for me, guys. They did not have number 1 there. Someone must have already picked through it, but pretty cool that these were waiting for me and I got them for $3 to finish the set. The other one, I'd be surprised if anyone picked it. This is a character I don't care too much for, but hey, I'm just gonna show it to you. It's this. This is The Phantom. It's from 1967, published by King Comics. It's actually The Phantom number 23. Now, The Phantom, of course, is a very old character going back into the 30s, originally printed in newspaper strips, and then, printed in comic books for decades by different publishers. Complicated publishing history. This was when he was part of King Comics here. And I got this comic book for one reason, because it's in incredible shape. For a book from 1967, guys, I mean, there's like no blemishes on this. I think one non-color breaking spine tech. You don't see books from the 60s in this good a shape very often, guys. And it's pretty cool art, too. I think it's pretty awesome. So, yeah, just for the condition alone, and they had a couple other Phantom books, but this is the one that jumped out to me. I thought it looked pretty neat, and I was impressed by the condition. So, yeah, grand total, guys, I spent $9 at this place. It wasn't the $1 fines I was hoping to track down, but hey, you never know what you're going to find, and I'm happy with all 3 of these pickups. So next up, I have some comic books I got at an indoor flea market. I saw it advertised online. It was a local flea market, and I'd never heard of it before. So I had to seek it out. And yeah, I don't know if I'd call it an indoor flea market as much as like an indoor tag sale. It was in an old church, and there were like 12 people there. The stuff was completely random. Some of the cooler things I saw, one guy had lots of vintage toys, like lots of G.I. Joe stuff from the 80s with the big vehicles. But there was one guy there with comic books. His name was Walter. He was a comic book collector himself, and he had a whole bunch of boxes of dollar books, which I love hunting through. So I'm going to show you the 5 books I ended up with, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Walter, because he's a pretty fascinating guy. So first up, I have some X-Factor books. I always say how much I love X-Men comic books and X-Men related teams. So I got X-Factor annual number 8. We have X-Factor number 76. Cool Wolfsbane cover right there. X-Factor number 77. We have Cannonball, Wolfsbane, actually the whole team there. Strife looks like the bad guy. And then I got a couple of Daredevil books. I got Daredevil number 172, some Frank Miller goodness, although this is in pretty bad shape. And then Daredevil number 296. So yeah, $1 each. I got 5 of them, $5. But big whoop, right? These are cheap comic books. They're not worth that much. But this guy, Walter, was really cool because he actually recognized me from the channel, and he likes to watch my channel to get ideas of where to hunt for comic books. I told you guys, like, locals always watch my channel to like find out where my hidey spots are, where I find these comic books, and that's what he does. But more interestingly was that Walter was an artist in his own right. He actually has lots of really cool comic book related art. He actually had a portfolio of his prints that he showed me. And what he likes to do is mashups, where he takes comic book characters we all know and love and mashes them up with other like pop culture characters. So really good artist. I was very impressed. But just as cool, he had a huge portfolio next to him. And it was original comic book art. I think he said he traded for it. And there was all sorts of good stuff in there. You know, he had stuff, JLA. He had some Adam Strange art. He had some Aquaman. But I think the coolest ones I saw in there were actually Archie comic book art. And it wasn't labeled or signed, you know, by the artist, but it looked a lot like Dan DeCarlo art. Now, I didn't have the money on me to get into this stuff. You know, I don't really collect original art, but it's definitely something I could see myself getting into. And I think he said he had more at home. So I took down his information. You know, guys, these are the best parts about going to these things. Yeah, I ended up with 5, you know, cheap comic books, but it's this new connection I got that's probably going to pay off in the long run. You never know who you're going to meet, and that's why it's always good checking these places out. So these next 2 books I got from a proper indoor flea market, this time the Yankee Flea Market in Palmer, Massachusetts. It is a gigantic indoor consignment shop. There are hundreds of vendors, and I go there all the time because there are a couple of vendors that always have comic books. I was in the area, I made a beeline for one of those vendor booths, and sure enough, I saw all the comic books I'm used to seeing, lots of stuff from the 90s. It didn't seem like anything new, and then I glanced down to the right and I saw a box full of Ghost Rider Volume 2. This is the volume starring the Danny Ketch version of Ghost Rider from the early 90s, the Ghost Rider I grew up with. Not a very valuable series, but there are a couple of books I was actually looking for, and I happen to have found one. And it's this. This is Ghost Rider Volume 2, number 2 from 1990. And why did I want this book? Because it's the first appearance of the Ghost Rider villain, Blackout. Who cares, right? He's a minor villain. Well, I've talked about in the past how much I love the Marvel trading cards of the early 90s. I like to collect the first appearances of the guys in the cards. And you guessed it, I have a couple of Blackout cards. You see right here on the back, first appearance, Ghost Rider Volume 2, number 2. Had to have it, so I was searching it out. Now, anyone who saw the second Nick Cage Ghost Rider movie, there's a villain in that I think is based off of Blackout. He looks like him, but he doesn't have any of the same powers. The Blackout in the comic books actually has the ability to black out things. He makes things darker. He absorbs light. He also has like mechanical fangs. Kind of a weird character, but he was a pretty good Danny Ketch Ghost Rider villain in the 90s, and I was happy to get the book. You see right here, it was listed at $3, but the vendor was having like a 25% off sale, so I got it for $2 and change. Totally happy to get, you know, a first appearance character from the cards for that price. The other one I got, I am really excited about. I was in another one of those vendor booths. I knew I had comic books, random stuff, nothing I was really into, but I looked down and saw a couple of trade paperbacks. I love cheap trade paperbacks because not only is it a very digestible, easy way to read comic book storylines, but if you can find them for a character you like, plus a storyline you were already intending to read, you gotta get it, and that's exactly what happened here. I found this. This is the trade paperback of Blackest Night by Jeff Johns, Ivan Rice, Auclair Albert, and Joe Prado. I've talked a lot about the Jeff Johns run on Green Lantern before, how I really like what he did with the emotional spectrum and all the new lanterns. Well, all those storylines sort of culminated in this one here, Blackest Night, where all the different lanterns have to fight against Necron and the Black Lanterns of Death. Basically, the ability to resurrect dead superheroes as the Black Lanterns. I've wanted to read this one for a long time. I have a lot of the tie-in ones leading up to it. I was already planning on reading it. Again, must have just been my day. Couldn't believe it. It was there for $3. I tell you guys, not only is the storyline really cool, the art is absolutely fantastic. And perhaps my favorite part is the back of this book actually has commentary, director's commentary from the writer, the artist, the editors, talking about every page, every panel, you know, all of like the sort of insight and all the stuff that went into making these comic books and different changes they made over time. Just awesome. I love this behind the scenes stuff. So super excited about this. I think this is the first 8 issues plus the prologue. I'm excited to get the next volume of this where they introduce the White Lanterns of Life. But either way, guys, Blackest Night, trade paperback, super excited about this. Let me know down in the comments if you've read this storyline. I'm going on vacation soon. I'm really excited to bring this with me. $3, come on guys. Can't go wrong. It's brand new too. Doesn't look like it was ever read. What a deal. So this next group of comic books I did not get in a strange and unusual place. I got them at a very cool place. I got them at His and Her Comics in Greenfield, Massachusetts. I talk about this store all the time on my channel, guys. It's my favorite comic book store in the whole world, and there's a fantastic owner there named Nishan who always looks out for me. I go there a lot. Case in point, I have 5 comic books here. I think I got them on 3 separate trips. One of the times I was there, he had recently got in a collection of 1980s Avengers comics. It's not a series that's worth a ton of money, but there are some key issues in there I was looking for. I was digging through the box and found a couple I wanted. And the first one is this. This is the Avengers number 292 from 1988, written by Walt Simonson, art by John Buscema. And the claim to fame here is that this is the first appearance of the Council of Time-Crossed Kangs. Why is that important? Well, I'm a big Kang fan, so for that reason alone, I wanted to have this book. But anyone who watched the movie Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania may remember the post-credit scene where all of the Kangs are together in that amphitheater, all cheering on sort of the big 3. Well, that's taken directly from this panel right here. You see all of the variants of Kang cheering on Kang the Conqueror right here. And even that sort of weird looking Kang you see at the end of the movie there is taken directly from this guy right here. So again, as a Kang lover, and as, you know, it being the fact that this panel is immortalized now in the MCU, I had to have this book. But the best part, guys, I got this for $1. Not a huge book, but it was definitely one I was interested in adding to my collection when I found it in the box. The other one is definitely more of a typical key in that it's a first appearance, and it's this. So this is Avengers number 257 from 1985, written by Roger Stern, art also by John Buscema, and this is the first appearance of the character Nebula. I think most people know Nebula from the Guardians of the Galaxy films. Starts off as a villain, the daughter of Thanos, ends up becoming a good guy and a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Well, her arc is kind of similar in the comic books. Instead of being Thanos' daughter, she claims to be his granddaughter, and she is definitely a villain in the 80s when she came out, guys. She played a rather huge role in the Infinity Gauntlet storyline written by Jim Starlin. Yeah, she was a villain for decades until she also became sort of an anti-hero, good guy in the Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, why did I have to have this book? You know it's coming, guys. I am at the mercy of these cards. I have the Nebula card from, Marvel Cards, Series 2, right there in the back. First appearance, Avengers number 257. I had the card, I had to have the book, and also I got it for a great deal. I mean, all comic books we know are coming down in price, but especially these Guardians of the Galaxy books, I feel like, with the final movie coming out, I've noticed they've been coming down, and I ended up getting this for $20, which I think is a pretty good deal. It's a really high grade. So yeah, first appearance of Nebula. I got the card, I got the book. I thought it was a great deal. Totally worth the $20 to add it to my collection. So this next book's pretty cool, and I got it for a great price. This is Marvel Team Up number 141. It's a team up between Spider-Man and Daredevil, 2 of my favorite characters. And this is known as the second appearance of Spider-Man's black suit, tied with Spectacular Spider-Man 90. Now, the first appearance of Spider-Man's black suit is in this book. I already had a copy of this. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 252. This went on sale in January of 1984, and this one went on sale in February of 1984. So early black suit Spider-Man, guys, is always cool to collect. But it's pretty cool history, actually, around the black suit, and especially what was going on in 1984. So in 1984, we had that huge crossover, Secret Wars, where all of the Marvel heroes and villains are whisked into space for this gigantic battle. And there are lots of things that happen in that storyline that would have consequences in Marvel comic books for years to come. The thing is, they're not going to hit the pause button on all other Marvel publications until that series was done. I mean, it was being published every month for the whole year. So what they did was, all the other books in Marvel Comics that year took place after Secret Wars, but you had to read Secret Wars to see why things happened the way they did. So all of a sudden, beginning in 1984, Spider-Man shows up in a brand new black suit. And it's cool, we can change it from his clothing, like a lot of people thought it was really neat, but you don't know exactly where it comes from until you read Secret Wars number 8 and you find out it is like a living suit. And then of course later you find out it's a alien symbiote that would eventually become Venom. So yeah, I thought this was pretty cool. This book can go for a little bit of money. People love Black Suit Spider-Man. But this one here, because it has a couple creases and it's got this like marker right here, I was able to get it for $20, which I think is a great deal. And it's a great companion piece to go alongside my ASM 252. Yeah, great deal for $20. Very happy to pick it up. So these next 2 comic books I got as a package deal. And this first one should be no surprise to anyone who knows me. It's an X-Men book. This is X-Men number 102 from 1976, written by Chris Claremont, art by Dave Cockrum. I'm still chipping away at my Chris Claremont X-Men run. I'm getting really close. I needed this book anyways, but this is particularly a cool one because it is the first matchup between these two heavyweights, Colossus and Juggernaut. Juggernaut had been a villain, since the Silver Age, but Colossus had only been introduced the year before in Giant Size X-Men #1. This is the first time those two face off, and they have lots of classic battles for years to come. It was listed at $60. I'll tell you how much I paid for it in a second because I packaged it with this one. This is Fantastic Four number 67. It's from 1967, written by Stan Lee, art by Jack Kirby, and this is the first appearance of him, later known as Adam Warlock. So in the issue before this, number 66, you find out the origin of him, how there's a group in space called the Enclave that are making the next step in human evolution. He's incubating in this cocoon, and in this issue here, the cocoon hatches, and you see his face. Although you only see him for a couple of panels at the end. His first true appearance, I guess, as him would be in Thor number 165, and then years later in Marvel Premiere number 1, he'd get the moniker of Adam Warlock. But still, yeah, I like the fact that you actually see him in this. He's not just a cocoon, so I've always wanted to have this book because I think Adam Warlock is cool. Again, growing up in the 80s and 90s, he was a pretty big deal. But also, and yeah, you guys should have seen this coming by this point, I got the trading cards right here with Adam Warlock. One interesting thing they do say his first appearance on these cards is Fantastic Four number 66. So they consider, the cocoon and the origin to be his first appearance, not his actual face. But hey, it's pretty cool. Now, when I got this at His and Her Comics, he actually had a couple of copies of this on his wall. He had a much higher grade copy, and he had this one here. This one, although I think from your point of view, looks pretty good. It's a white cover. It shows stains pretty good. It actually is pretty heavily stained, but you guys can't really see it. In fact, I can barely see it. There's a little bit of staining down here, but on the inside of the cover, it's much more evident. It's also heavily creased, and because of that, I was able to get this for $100. That was the sticker price on it. Now, like I said, $100 and $60. How much did I pay for these? Well, Nishan had recently done me a huge solid, and he and Jeff from Comic Spa had conspired to give me an Avengers 8 first appearance of Kang as a thank you. Because of that, I'm sure I could have got these books cheaper. I told him I wanted to pay him full amount for these books. And he was still a great guy. He still knocked $10 off, so I got it for $150 despite my best efforts. I'm pretty happy to have these for that price, guys. I need to finish off that Chris Claremont run. And again, it's not just the cards. I like Adam Warlock. I think he's cool. He's a huge Marvel character, and I've always wanted this book. It's a cool looking book. It's Jack Kirby art. Come on. So I think for $100, this is a great price. So there you go, guys. That was another Roundup video. Lots of random stuff from lots of random places, but I like everything I got. I got some great reading material for myself and my kids. I got a whole bunch of random cheap comic books from flea markets and yard sales. Nothing amazing, but it's more about the hunt than the comic books, right? And of course, I got some excellent comic books I'm very happy to add to my collection. Please head on down to the comments and let me know which of my pickups you like the best. And in the meantime, I hope you keep hunting for comic books in strange and unusual places as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.